get started. Okay, so the question how developers used to share knowledge about code, it was always very, very important, right? So the way developers used to share knowledge about code has changed tremendously over the years. And not so long ago in the 60s, if you wanted to know, if you wanted to understand code, you had to actually go through a lot of actual pages. These are books of code. And thankfully, we're not there. We moved over. And then we started with the folders. You know, we went digitalized, and you can see here, I don't know, I'm sorry if this picture is triggering, but if you remember, folders or folders, and good luck finding anything. Then we continued into internal wikis. So whether you used this is a screenshot from Confluence, but whether you use this or another internal wiki, then you know how annoying it is to search for something and then you get two results and you're not sure what is up to date. And overall, this is not the most amazing experience of searching for information about code. So we saw all of this evolution here at Swimm, and basically this is why Swimm was created. We saw this evolution and we thought we can do better. So we can bring all of this knowledge sharing process into the developer workflow. And really, this is what we did. We built Swimm. We built documents that are coupled with your code, that are connected to your code. And whenever the code changes, the document changes. And it lives in your IDE, and you can find it whenever you need it, and it's surfaced in the right time, and it's forever up to date. Sounds amazing. However, people are still spending a lot of time looking for answers about code. And we recently conducted a research here in Swimm and across developers in the US. And we found that 74% of developers spend over 3 hours a week looking for answers about code-related questions. And if that sounds a lot, amazingly, 31% of developers spend around 10 hours a week looking for answers about code-related questions, meaning around a quarter of their time, they're searching for answers. They're not doing things like coding. And then you can only imagine it creates a lot of issues, right? Code quality issues, and I'm sorry, higher load on experienced dev, the ones who keep on getting all of these questions, longer incident response time, slow delivery velocity. So still, the situation is better. Like we've seen this evolution, it's better than these piles of books, but it's not, it's still a problem. It's still a bottleneck. And so trying to understand why is knowledge sharing among developers is such a difficult problem. It divides into two different aspects as we see it, two main aspects. One is that some code bases are incredibly complex, and explaining it in text is just very, very hard. And the other problem is what we call tribal knowledge. A lot of the code bases that are written in a certain way, and this stays in the head of the specific developer who wrote it. And as time goes by, the knowledge and the code, just the distance between them goes farther and farther away. So whether the developer left the company or moved to another team, or just with time, they forget why they did a certain thing in a certain way. And ultimately, this is how a legacy code is created, right? So, and then we have like this black box that no one touches, and we're not sure what to do with it. So we understand that there's a problem, and we understand that this is an actual really complex problem. And what we're doing here today in this launch, we're aiming to set the next step in this evolution of code knowledge. So I'm happy to introduce Ask Swimm. And Ask Swimm is the only AI chat designed for development knowledge sharing. And what we're doing here today is, okay, so sorry. So what we're doing here today is, Omer will explain more about the technicality behind it, but in 2 lines, we're taking static analysis of your code base. And we're combining it with your collective tribal knowledge, meaning whatever's, what I just talked about, whatever's happening in documentation inside the developer's head. and we combine it so we can answer those questions your developers spend a quarter of their day looking for answers for. So that's pretty tremendous. And if you're gonna start using Ask on day one, you will know more about those scary undocumented parts of your code than any one developer can. So that's already a value on day one. But as a company that is dealing with knowledge sharing and with knowledge about code, we know that code itself doesn't tell the whole story, right? A lot of the actual most complex questions developer has are not in the answers are not in the code. It's in the around why we build things in a certain way and so on. And what we're doing is we're taking one of our strongest features, our code coupling docs, our docs that are automatically synced with code, and we're connecting it with feedback loops from your developers, from these strong developers that are keep on answering the same questions again, the same answers again and again, and build this complete knowledge base that enriches the answers Ask Swimm gives. So ultimately, over time, the more you use Ask, the better the answers get. I'll let it sink for a sec. Okay, so recap of why using Ask Swimm, and then I'm going to hand over the mic to Omer. It keeps developers in their flow. It frees these experienced developers from answering the same questions over and over again. It increases sharing of knowledge among developers. It improves knowledge code quality, and it helps onboard developers and vendors faster and more independently. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over the mic to Omer.
Thank you, Hadass, and hi everyone. I'm very happy to be with you all here today and to show you Ask Swimm. And what I'm going to do in the beginning is show you how I used Ask Swimm to contribute to a code base that I had never contributed to before, specifically an open source version of a game that I'll show in a moment. And then I'll talk a bit about how it's actually implemented. So the game I'm going to show today is called OpenTTD. TTD stands for Transport Tycoon Deluxe. You might recognize this game. It was released in 1995, and the open source community shared an open source version of it. And in this game, players build transportation empires by building roads and train stations, airports, and stuff like that. Now, when I was playing it, one thing that really bugged me, I tried to build this huge train station, so I had to remove some roads, and then I got to this error. So I got a message telling me I can't clear this area because the local authority refused to allow it, which is, well, annoying. I really wanted to build this train station. So I thought, okay, I might just use a cheat. Games have cheats, and OpenTTD has cheats. If you open from the UI, you find the cheats pane and you see different cheats that are available, like increasing money or changing the date and other things. But I didn't find anything that was applicable to my use case. So I thought, okay, it's open source. Let's just change the game. And for that, I would need to understand how to add a new cheat. So I started by asking this to another chat application that is not Ask Swimm, that doesn't actually know the entire code base. So when I asked how to add a new cheat type to the game, the response I got wasn't incorrect. It was just very generic. He told me that as an AI programming assistant, I can guide you on how to add a new cheat type to a game in a general sense. However, the exact implementation will depend on the game's architecture and the programming language used, which is correct and exactly what I need. I need specific instructions on how to do it in this game. So now I'm going to head over to Ask Swimm and ask the same question. So when we ask Swimm that, and before I show you what I get, just to understand that actually what I'm asking here is how do I add a new occurrence of a recurring pattern in the code base, something that is very common when you introduce changes to a code base. So to really answer that question, Ask Swimm will have to understand what a cheat is and how you add a new one, that is what different occurrences of cheats have in common, and generalize upon that. And this is exactly what I'm going to show you now. So Ask Swim tells me that it involves a step-by-step guide in this case, and it shows me a few different files where I need to make changes. One of them is cheat type.h, and there is this struct here. I called my cheat sudo remove, and now I have to add it in another file called cheat GUI for the graphical user interface, where I have to add this as well. And there are other structures I need to update. I won't trouble you with all the details of implementation, but Swimm took me through a walkthrough of the codebase here, specifically 2 different files that I needed to change in order to add this to the UI. So now we can test our changes. I can rebuild or recompile the game using make. So I'm building it. I'm going to launch the game again. And in the cheat pane, I have a new checkbox called sudo remove roads everywhere. And I can select the checkbox, which is great, but it's just a checkbox. It doesn't do anything. I mean, I can read the value of it and understand whether it's selected or not, but that's all it does. In order to really understand how to implement this cheat, we need to understand how or where the block is implemented, how the game knows to block a user from removing a road in town. So I will ask Swimm again, and this time, notice that it's a different kind of question. The previous question got Ask Swimm to look in the code base, find different occurrences of something, specifically cheats, and then generalizing on what adding a cheat means. In this question, on the other hand, we're asking about a very specific behavior and location, and Swimm basically needs to point me in the right direction and maybe explain a bit. So here, when I ask where do we check if a user is allowed, oh, I had a typo there, never mind, to remove a road. Then we see here that we get to a specific file, and Swimm explained that this is the function check allow removed road in the file road cmd.cpp that checks if it's allowed to remove the given road bit from the given tile. Again, without diving too much into the specifics of this game, we can see that there are a few checks here that decide whether I'm allowed to build or remove specific things, specific road bits, and also computes a cost for it. Specifically, we can see on line 279 that there is a check. And if we don't do this check, if not town check, then we return command cost. So I'm just going to implement the same thing. I'll say that if my cheat is set, then return the command cost. After I implemented that, and I check the box, I can remove all the relevant roads and implement my desired new train station. Hooray! Okay, so that was fun. Now what? So let's consider that I implemented a change to the game, and now another user, another developer sometime wants to understand this cheat. So if you go back to Ask Swimm at this point and you reanalyze the code base and you pose a question like, what does the sudo remove cheat do? Swimm is able to analyze the code and explain the addition that I just made. The sudo remove cheat in OpenTTD allows you to remove town roads even if the town reputation is low. It goes on to explain why you would sometimes need a reputation with a town to perform certain actions, but again, irrelevant for this demonstration. You will also notice that at the bottom here, you see that Swimm suggests some follow-up questions. So you might want to ask, how can I activate the sudo remove cheat? Or what are the other cheats available in OpenTTD? You can click on them and get the next answers. So this is a simple question. And now I want to actually document what I did in implementing this feature and also include some things that are not implemented in this document. So to start, I could write a document manually, but using Ask Swimm, I can ask a question and let Swimm do the heavy lifting for me. So I'm asking, how did we implement the sudo remove cheat? And I'm going to get a response that is an answer to the question, which actually serves as a good basis for a document. It explains what the cheat is and how it's implemented in the UI and also in the backend. And now if I click create doc, then Swimm takes this and creates a basis for a document from the conversation I had with Ask Swimm. At this point, we also suggest that you couple some of the elements with code. So for example, the document here, which used to be the answer of Ask Swimm, begins with the sudo remove cheat, and you might want to link this to code. So the name sudo remove is the name of the cheat. If it ever changes, we would want it to change in the document as well. So Swimm suggests that I couple this, that I link it to a specific token in the code. For example, sudo remove from line 197 in the file cheat qui.cpp, or I can pick the one on roadcmd.cpp. So I'm selecting the one that I want, and now it's coupled with code. If that name ever changes, we'll change it in this document. If it's ever removed, we'll notify you that this document needs updating. We can do the same for paths. Like here, we have the file chat.qui.cpp. If this file is ever renamed, or if it's moved to another directory, we would update the document so it stays up to date. The same applies, of course, for the code snippets you see here. So all of the lines, for example, from cheatqui.cpp. So after all of the explanation I got from Ask Swimm, and this is the part that we implemented before with that if the cheat is set, then return command cost, I wanted to add something else. While implementing this cheat, I actually wanted to avoid blocking the user not only from building roads or removing roads, but also from removing industries. And I ran into a bug when I tried to implement it, and this is why I didn't implement it in the end. Now, I wanted the next developer to look at this document, say a developer who wants to extend this cheat, understand why I didn't do it. Obviously, it's not something you can understand from code because it's not implemented in the code. I ended up not implementing it. So I added an explanation. I said, okay, let's explain why we didn't allow users to remove industries. So I explained here that we found that if an industry in a town is being removed, it can cause an error in the path finding algorithm relevant to the adjacent station, which is one of the more complex parts of this code base. And I didn't really have the motivation to debug it because, frankly, I just wanted to remove those roads and build a train station. I will deal with industries if I ever face that challenge. But now, if another user, another developer gets to this repository and is curious about this specific detail, or if I reanalyze the codebase with Ask Swimm, I could then pose the question why the pseudo remove cheat does not allow to remove industries. And I get a response that is based on the code of industries, but also this part of the document that explains, and it says the document, how did we implement the pseudo remove cheat, provides some context on why industries cannot be removed using the pseudo remove cheat. If I click, it opens up the document on the right-hand side. So this was a brief demo of what Ask Swimm looks like. And as you've noticed, we actually asked different type of questions. We asked how to add something, with how something is implemented or where something is implemented. We asked what a cheat is, a specific cheat, why something is not implemented in this case. And in all of these various scenarios, Ask had to understand the code base in order to provide good answers. So now I'm going to briefly describe what's happening under the hood of this capability. So basically, when you start with Ask Swimm, you're a user, you're posing a question, and Ask Swimm wants to find an answer and provide you with an answer. Now, the key to understand here is that when we get the question, our goal is to find all the relevant context. And in this case, it could mean, for example, for the question of how to add a new cheat type, it means finding different examples of cheats, or maybe even going further and explaining about those cheats, what's common for them among different cheats. And then we provide all of that information as context alongside the original question to a large language model such as GPT. Then the LLM, the large language model, gets the question and the context and generates the answer, which we then provide the user. So it's all about the context. This is the important thing to say here. Obviously, we're relying on LLMs, magnificent technology, but the missing part for LLMs without Ask Swimm, say, is the context, the knowledge of your code base. And we found in many different trials and errors that if you provide too little context, obviously the LLM can provide a full answer because it doesn't know what context it doesn't receive. On the other hand, if you provide too much context, the LLM also does a pretty poor job. So if I were able in a futuristic LLM to provide all of the code base as context, it would be slow and expensive, but also it seems that LLMs are pretty poor at doing a job. They do a pretty poor job when answering a specific question from a very large context. I like to think of it as if you were given a book. I would ask you to read through it, all of it, and then ask you a specific question whose answer resides on a random page in the middle. So our job at Ask Swimm is to provide the model with all the context it needs, but hopefully only the context it needs. So how do we do that? Basically, we rely on two main sources. One is your code base, and another is documents. When I say documents, I mean both Swimm documents as well as existing documents on your code base, like README files or other Markdown files or TXT files, and so on. We take your code base and we perform deep static analysis. So in this stage, we understand a lot of things about your code base. For example, what functions there are, what classes there are, who is calling who, so different relationships, the file structure, and other things. We then do a bunch of things here. One is to create entities. For example, this is a function, this is a call, something like that. And the other is to use something we built in the past and revived now for Ask Swimm that we call Swimm generated docs. These are full documents that look just like the Swimm documents I showed you before. So they include text alongside code snippets and tokens, so elements from the code. And they actually explain a concept about the code base with code and text to the LLM. We found out that this is actually the ideal input for LLMs. I think that because LLMs were trained mainly on natural language and natural language alongside code, then it makes sense that the ideal input for LLMs would be code alongside text that describes it. Also, it's much easier for an LLM or a developer, to be honest, to understand complex code when you actually show the different parts of the code of the specific flow alongside explanations in natural language, rather than just send a lot of code. So we take bits taken from static analysis, as well as the Swimm generated docs, and also documents that were created by users, and we create knowledge items from all of them. So this is our knowledge base. It consists of knowledge items, which we then pre-process and store in a vector database. We then optimize the vector database so that when someone asks a question, we can retrieve the relevant knowledge items. And this needs to happen very fast. So a lot of optimization is happening in the background to make sure the retrieval process is fast. And of course, all of this can happen thanks to Autosync, our algorithm and technology that allows you to keep documents up to date as the code changes. So when you send the LLM with context, if you send something that is wrong or outdated, the LLM doesn't know that it's wrong, right? It trusts you that you send true data as context. So if you send wrong, outdated information, it's even worse than not sending information at all, because the LLM might hallucinate, or in this case, rely on actual data that is wrong that you send them and write something misleading. So by using Autosync and by rerunning this process in a smart manner upon code changes, we make sure that we feed the LLM only with relevant context that is up to date with the current state of your code base. So to zoom out again, for the big picture, when a user asks a question, we have this knowledge base we've built, and we put a lot of energy into building in an effective manner, so that when a user then asks a question, we retrieve all the relevant knowledge items from the knowledge base. We might then also enrich those items on just-in-time manner, given the specific question, and then we provide all of the context that we found. Again, we're striving to give all the relevant context, but only the relevant context as a message to the LLM with the original question, and then the LLM generates an answer, which we provide back to the user. So this was a high-level overview of how Ask Swimm is constructed. And now I'll pass it on to Tom to tell you about the security aspects and how we run a trial with Ask Swimm.
Hi, everyone. So I already got some questions about security in the Q&A, so I'll jump right into that. This is one of the common questions, given that, as you saw, Swimm works intimately with your code. That's the deal with it. So what do you need to know about this? First of all, no code or content is ever stored on our servers or outside your network at all. That's because the knowledge base that Omo described before is stored on your network. And also all the documents that Omo mentioned are stored as Markdown files within your code. Second thing is that, well, sorry, I already said that. Another important thing, if we're talking about AI tools, is that no models are being trained on client code, on your code, or client content. Nothing is being trained as part of the development or the work with this tool. Not by us, not by any third party, and so on. Also, if you already have your own instance of GPT, whether that's on Azure or using OpenAI Enterprise, we can work with your own instance. So, for instance, if you are using, let's say, Bitbucket Data Center, so you're self-hosting your own Git, and you have your own instance of GPT on Azure, for instance, that would mean that code and content would never have to leave your network in order for all of what you saw to work properly. That holds also for GitHub Cloud, GitHub Server, GitLab Server, and so on. Another important thing to note is that we are SOC 2 and ISO 27001 certified, which makes the approval process with security usually shorter and easier. All right. Let's talk about pricing. So Swimm has several price tiers. We're talking about Ask Swimm, which is a very complex and powerful tool that is available only for our Enterprise Starter and Enterprise clients. Enterprise Starter would include everything that you heard today. So the chat interface, generating documents, supporting your self-hosted Git, integrating with the CI to make sure that documents remain up to date, enforcing that if you want. And that would mean also a 30-seat minimum. If you have more questions about this, of course, we'll be available on email, and also you can ask questions in the Q&A. What would a trial of Swimm look like? So first of all, you can try out Swimm for free. Usually the free trials are between 5 to 14 days. But we also have, usually for larger organizations, paid trials that can last between 6 to 12 months. What's the goal? The goal is to see how Swimm helps you with top priority projects and pains and getting your development team to work faster and with less problems. How do we manage that during that time? It's pretty easy. We set up, mostly this happens on locally on laptops that developers in your company use. And then you just ask questions. And you ask questions particularly that you either bother you or bother other developers and waste a lot of time. Then we suggest experiencing how writing a document, particularly documents that Swimm helps you to write, would augment the knowledge base. And then when you answer the same question again, you would get additional context or a more extensive explanation like Omer showed before. How do you make this happen? So schedule a call with us. So you can scan this QR code now to get a link to schedule a call with us, or we're going to send additional information by email, and you can take it from there. I'm going to leave this on for a moment, and let's see if y'all have additional questions we can discuss.
Yeah, so I suggest we'll jump into the last part of this session, the Q&A. So some of the questions we already answered. Some of the questions we'll repeat. I'll start with the first one. So Naeem asked, once purchased, who do we reach out to help us set it up and teach us best practices? Tom, this one's for you.
Yeah, sure. So we're talking about a capability that's for our enterprise clients. So you won't even need to reach out to us, right? We would already be in a conversation. And for our enterprise clients, we are very much involved in getting everyone up to speed and how to use Swimm and how to make the most out of it. We usually work with leadership and tech leads in the organization to understand what is currently top priority, where there are bottlenecks in development, what are the most important pains, and then we get people on board and we work with specific developers that have a lot of additional information like business logic, business context that people need to know about, and help them use Swimm to create documents about it, to both enrich the answers people are getting, but also to just send them to read these documents simply.
Cool. Okay, Naeem, I hope this answers your question. Another question from an anonymous attendee to Omer. Is there any use of OpenAI's codex?
So for the generation of the answer, we use, as I mentioned, an LLM. Currently, it's mostly GPT. And so GPT kind of replaces the original codex of OpenAI by combining its capabilities. For the retrieval part, that is to understand the context, we do not use OpenAI for that, or another LLM mostly.
And I'll just add to that we use a version of OpenAI that's on Azure, and part of that means that no prompts that are ever sent are saved, and nothing is used in order to train anything, and nothing, and it doesn't get mixed up with other clients' prompts and so on.
Another question from Yusef. If I understand correctly, Ask Swimm generates Swimm docs for the entire code base? Question mark.
So Swimm does generate Swimm docs for the entire code base. These are automatically generated documents that are not visible to the users. We use them so that when you ask a question that one of those documents is able to answer, we provide it as context to the LLM so you get a great answer. I hope this answered the question.
Cool. Andrea asked, and I saw another question about it, so I'll merge them. Is there also an integration with ClickUp, or if it planned to be in the future? And I saw another question about Confluence, so maybe we can answer these two together.
Yeah, I like this question because we're ClickUp users. Yay, ClickUp. So no, unfortunately, we still don't have an integration with ClickUp, though. If we ever have a more serious conversation about how, between us, we could talk about how to utilize tickets and other knowledge elements created by product teams and make those into documents that are coupled with the code to enrich the context. And that way, when someone asks not only how is this feature implemented, but also why was it implemented, they can use that additional context. And about Confluence, there are two ways to look at it, at this. First of all, if you want, currently, if you want your context or documents from Confluence to be added into the knowledge base, the way to do that would be to import them into Swimm, which means that, sorry, that they would be that way incorporated into the knowledge base. Another way to look at this, sometimes as software organizations, you want to write documents and have those exposed in other platforms, specifically sometimes for other parts of the organization that don't necessarily have access to the code. So Swimm documents are stored as Markdown, and one of the things that we do with our enterprise clients is help them to build flows that publish Swimm documents on other platforms. Those can include an internal website, platforms like Backstage, and also Confluence. That way, anytime a document gets updated, they would be pushed and replace the previous version of the document on that platform. So that way, if, for instance, you're writing like a playbook of what to do for support in certain situations and you want to keep that up to date, you can write that with Swimm, and then that would be pushed to Confluence, and people from the support team that don't necessarily even have access to Swimm would be able to see that as well.
Cool. Another question from David. Can additional context or embeddings be added, like libs or dependencies?
So I am not 100% sure I understand where you're going with this, David. If I assume correctly, the question is if you can add dependencies that is other libraries that you're currently depending on, right? So this is indeed possible to add. By default, if something is in your git ignore, then we will not index it, but you can get it out of git ignore, and there are other ways to insert things explicitly to the knowledge base.
Okay, cool. I have a follow-up question from Yusuf, and also it integrates with another question. So I'll merge it all together. Yusuf asks if Ask Swim generates Swim docs to the entire code base, and I believe Tom answered. And now Yusuf asks a follow-up question. So Ask Swim is able to infer business logic after static analysis, which is what gets documented. And I'll combine it with another question of Brian, who asked, what happens if we don't have documents or documents are not up to date? Tom.
Oh, no, actually, do you want to take that?
Okay.
Sure thing. So sorry about the confusion. There are two types of documents here. There are documents that Swimm automatically generates. These include hopefully everything you can understand from code, but it won't include things you can't extract from code, such as business logic. And those documents reside in our backend, that is in the knowledge base that actually resides in your network, as Tom mentioned. And we use them to provide good answers for questions. Other type of documents are documents that users create with or without the assistance of Ask Swim, where you can write whatever you want, such as business logic, explain that you did a certain thing, you implemented this feature for a specific client due to a specific requirement from someone from the product team, and explain the things that are not in the code base that are hardest to understand for developers trying to understand something from the code. So you can document these. Then we must make sure these documents remain up to date. These are both. We need to make sure the automatically generated documents that are used as context for answers remain up to date. We also have to make sure that the documents that you created by writing in natural language remain up to date. And we do both of them, though in different ways. For the latter, we actually rely on the fact that you document your knowledge and couple it to code. And then we track code changes, and there is a big process around that. We can dive deeper into it, I think, on another occasion.
All right. We have a few more minutes, so we'll take a couple of more questions. There's a very good question from Gennady. He asked, given you have managed to capture the current knowledge with the generated Swim docs, do you plan to add knowledge coverage visibility to check whether it deteriorates as a result of a suggested code change?
That's a great question because it's one of the things that we plan. We want to implement something that we call documentation coverage, so that we'll be able to direct our users where they should add documents. But even before doing that automatically, what we're going to do is create a short loop between questions that get a suboptimal answer and the relevant person that can give a full answer about that. We believe that that would mean that the efforts in adding additional context would be focused on where people are actually looking for that additional context. So the way that that's going to work, and hopefully that's going to be pretty soon, is that if someone gets an answer and they give the thumbs down, they'll be able to tag people in the organization, and then they're going to get a notification on Slack and in the app, and they can take that answer and create a document based on that answer, removing things that are less relevant, adding additional context, and then publishing that answer. Then two things will happen. A, next time anyone asks that question, they're going to get a much better answer. And B, the person that originally asked that question will get notified about this new answer.
Thanks, Tom. So we'll do two more questions, two short questions. The rest of the questions we'll answer later offline. We got a question if there's limitations on programming languages. The short answer, exactly. All right, and we got a few questions from a few different users who ask if it's possible to use Ask for teams with less than 30 seats.
So yes, we won't make you hire people that you don't need to hire. That said, because this is an enterprise plan, there's a minimum seat count that we start with because of the level of service that we supply as part of this. So the price per seat or price per user for you might be higher than folks that start off with the 30 seats. But you can still use Swimm. And you just ask yourself how much value it's going to give you. And let's put, the way that we count seats aside. And we can continue this conversation, offline.
Thank you. So we've got a lot more questions. We'll answer all of them offline. Just to summarize, you can scan the screen and schedule a call with us, and we can tell you more about Ask Swimm. This call is recorded. This session is recorded, and we're going to send it to everyone who signed up in the next few days. We're here for more questions. We're very excited about this launch. We really do believe this is something that will change how developers interact with knowledge and will ultimately save a lot of time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Omer. Thank you, Tom. And have a great day, evening, afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.